Hello everyone and welcome to this month's Masterclass, which is going to be all about Basic Elimination Endplays. Endplay sounds really scary because it's a technique that advanced players use, but actually if you look for certain things that I'm going to show you today, you'll start to be able to see them coming up a bit more and maybe even try them yourselves. And of course, as usual in the Masterclass, we've got the deals to follow where you get to practice the skills. And by practicing them, you will become masters. So we're going to talk about what the point of making such a play is, what a problem suit might look like that could be solved in this way, how you do the eliminating, how you exit, which will become clear later, and finally and most importantly, how to spot one of these plays, because it's no good being able to do it in theory if someone tells you, and rather than being able to spot it at the table. So let's talk about what the point of it is. What's the aim? What you want is for one of your opponents to win a trick at a point where no matter what they play, they're helping you. So they give you give them only good options for you. How do you achieve this? You will normally you will always have one or more problem suits, which could be solved or sometimes just aided by an opponent being the first one to play a trick in that suit. You will also have eliminated the alternatives from the hand so that the opponent doesn't have good options, good safe options that they can just leave their hand in. Then you put them on lead and you say, ha, now it's your go. Do your worst. And in this particular masterclass, we're only going to be talking about full eliminations. It is possible to do it only partially, but that's a lot more complicated. And this is a much better one, just as an introduction. Okay, so the opponent's options will be, after they're thrown in, potentially playing the problem suit for you. This we kind of mentioned already. Another option might be giving you a rough and discard. So remember, we're talking about suit contracts here. If you're not clear on what a rough and discard is, if you've forgotten the term or it's in the back of your memory, I'll just give you a refresher. When you have a void in both hands, declarer and dummy, and the opponents choose to play that suit, that means that you can throw a loser from a different suit in one hand and rough in the other. So you get to turn your loser into a winner by roughing something you couldn't normally rough. Here's an example. You are void in diamonds and you have ace 10 7 opposite king jack 6. So you have a two-way guess for the queen. If they play the suit, then they tell you where the queen is or they let you score a cheap trick. So either way, you get the third trick in clubs. Alternatively, if they play a diamond, you get to throw a club from one hand. Say you throw away the 6 of clubs, you can rough with the other hand, and now you don't have any club losers anymore because your ace is covering the jack and then you have the king. So what do problem suits look like? Are they always two-way guesses? Well, no. They might be a frozen suit. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this term, it means that whoever plays the suit first must give up a trick in it, and it usually means that the honours are split between the four hands. So you can see here, if you imagine playing a spade as declarer, if you played a small one to the queen, right hand opponent would win their king, and then they could play the 10 through your jack, and they take 3 spade tricks. However, if left hand opponent decided to play a spade first, doesn't matter whether they play low or high. If they play the 2, then you can play low from the dummy, say right hand opponent wins the king, and now you have your queen and jack intact to push out the ace, so you score a trick in spades. And similarly, if they play the ace, Now you just have to push out the king. We could have a situation like the one in the example earlier where you've got to guess, often who has the queen, but it could be who has the jack. It could also be that you have the king missing, and you can deliberately put the person who would be offside on lead, and then they give you your king finesse as well. Either way, the opponent is revealing the location of an important missing card. So here's the example we looked at earlier. It doesn't matter who plays the suit. If left-hand opponent plays it, then you'll score a cheap trick. If right-hand opponent plays it, then you can play low, and left-hand opponent is pretty doomed. Another problem suit could be one that won't necessarily be fully solved by the opponents playing it first, but it could be that if a particular opponent plays it first, that it does give you an extra trick. So look at this example. If left-hand opponent plays a spade, then you're not going to get an extra trick. But if you can end play your right-hand opponent, then they always have to play away from the king, so that will give you an extra trick. If they play low, you can run it round to your queen. If they play the king, you squash it with the ace and your queen is a winner. Right, how do you do this eliminating of the other suits, the safe suits for the opponents? Well, you can do it simply by playing out high cards to remove your own holdings. So something like this, you have the ace, king and queen, and you can play all three of those to use up your 4-3-2, which is pretty simple, playing winners. You could also play out high cards just to remove your opponent's holdings. So with this example, it could be that the opponent's hearts are 3-2, in which case you actually don't need to play all 4 rounds of the suit. You only need to make sure that the opponents are out of hearts. It doesn't matter whether you have one left. Finally, you might be able to rough your holdings out. So these ones are a bit harder to spot. So you have something like ace 4-3 opposite 2. So you win the ace to avoid yourself in the suit, and now you play a heart to rough, cross back to the hand that had the ace originally, and you rough another heart, and that is enough to eliminate the suit. Now notice, if you're doing something like this, you might need quite a few trumps, so be aware of that. I'll remind you about this again later. The other thing you need to be careful about is, remember when I was roughing the third heart, it was not right after the second heart. I had to cross over to that hand again to rough the third one. So be careful, make sure you have as many entries to the other hand as possible. Maybe start eliminating this suit a bit earlier than the other suit if you can use those other elimination cards as entries. Once we've eliminated, then we need to exit to throw an opponent in so that they will be end played. So a common way of doing it is exiting to a master trump. It might be that you've taken a couple of rounds of trumps, say you've got a holding like this, you play the ace and king, the trumps will need to be 3-2, and if they are, after the ace and king, someone will be left with a master trump. So that means you can play a third round to throw that opponent in and make them play something that helps you. Only when you're ready. You can also eliminate and exit at the same time. So something like this diamond suit. If you play the ace first, now when you play the 3, you not only lose a trick, but you're also eliminating the suit at the same time because you have an equal number of cards in the suit in both hands. You can also exit in the problem suit itself. So this is actually reasonably common. Say you've got something like 4-3-2 opposite ace queen 10. If you take a finesse by playing a small card to the 10, there are a few possible options. Oops. If it wins, then you weren't going to lose a trick in the suit anyway, because the king and jack are on side. If it loses to the king, then that means that your ace and queen are already winners. So now you've only lost one trick. If it loses to the jack, this is the most interesting one, because that means your left-hand opponent will be end-played and forced to lead into your ace and queen, or maybe do something else like giving you a rough and discard in a different suit. Finally, we have to talk about how to spot these things. Think about what you need. You need one or more problem suits. You need suits where both of your hands can be voided, or both of the opponent's hands can be voided. You know, in trumps, you're not going to play out all your trumps, you need those. So you just need to make sure that the opponents don't have any left to exit safely with. You also need at least one trump in each hand. You have to have that threat of a rough and discard, so there's no point exiting with a master trump if it's the only one you have in one of your hands. Sorry, with a non-master trump. You also need a way of forcing an opponent to win a trick when you want them to. So you don't want them to suddenly win a trick too early, or for you to have so many winners that you don't actually have a way of getting them on lead. That way you're not going to be end playing, you're just going to be trying to play the suit correctly in the first place. Things to look for, big alarm bells that say this might be an elimination end play. Look for mirroring distributions, so that means that you have the same number of cards in each of the suits in both hands. Often these are really, really annoying hands to play because you don't get to do any roughing, but maybe you don't have to do any roughing because you can end play instead. So they lend themselves to eliminations because you tend to run out of cards in each of the suits at the same time. Another thing, something I mentioned earlier, make sure you have plenty of trumps in each hand. You don't always need this, but it's usually really important, and most especially if you need to do some roughing to eliminate a suit before throwing the opponents in, because you need to have that threat of the rough and discard. Finally, that's all the basic information that you need. Have a go at the tournament, play the practice hands, and see how you get on. Best of luck, everyone. Bye. I'll see you after each hand.